Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, fretful when evil touches him, and stingy when good reaches him, but not so those who pray and who are devoted to their salah, those who remain steadfast to their prayer, and those in whose wealth is a recognized right for the needy who ask, and him who is prevented for some reason to ask, and those who hold to the truth of the Day of Judgment, and those who fear the displeasure of their Lord, for their Lord's displeasure is the opposite of peace and tranquility, and those who guard their chastity. So this is the remedy, Islam. Islam is the remedy to our impatience and selfishness. Now, why is akhlaq, why is morality so important? Because Islam connects it directly to our iman. It is connected and linked directly to faith. We say that we believe. Can we see that faith in the way that we behave? That is the test for each one of us. Look at yourself in the mirror. You call yourself a believer? Does that reflect in your behavior? So that is the importance of morality. And that's not something strange, because the Prophet ﷺ himself told us that one of the most important things of his mission that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him was إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمْ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have been sent, the Prophet ﷺ said, I have been sent to perfect the noble qualities of character. The Prophet ﷺ was sent to perfect our behavior, was sent to perfect our manners, our morals. That is why the Prophet ﷺ was sent. Related to Iman, the Prophet ﷺ said and pointed out the wicked and evil characteristics of the person who is a hypocrite. That means he said he believes, but in fact he does not. And the Prophet ﷺ warned us and said, if you find these characteristics in a person, there is hypocrisy in him. And those 4 characteristics were إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذِبْ. When he speaks, he lies. وَإِذَا عَاهَدَ غَدَرَ. If he makes a promise, he breaks it. وَإِذَا اؤْتُمِنَ خَانَ. If he is given a trust, he betrays it. وَإِذَا خَاصَمَ فَجَرَ. And when he quarrels, he starts abusing. So think about those characteristics and whether we sometimes fall into those characteristics. The Prophet ﷺ warned us that those are the signs of hypocrisy. The Prophet ﷺ was asked by a companion, which Muslim has the perfect faith? Now the question itself is important because it demonstrates that the companions, they were always in search of perfection. They were not satisfied with mediocrity. They were not satisfied with just being average, Mr. and Mrs. Average, living basically average lives. No, they were not satisfied with that, because that is not what Islam teaches us. Islam teaches us to perfect ourselves, to be constantly developing and progressing. So this companion wanted to know from the Prophet ﷺ which person has perfect faith. So the Prophet ﷺ answered him, the one who has the best moral character. That is the person with perfect iman. Another person asked the Prophet ﷺ, who amongst the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is dearest to him, is most loved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Again, the companions wanted Allah to love them. So the Prophet ﷺ said, one who has the best moral character. And Rasulullah ﷺ said, to point out the importance of akhlaq compared to ibadah, he said that a person can reach a high status in the year after due to his good conduct, even though he may be weak in matters of worship. So even though he may come on the day of judgment with a small amount of ibadah, but if he presents himself with good conduct, that will weigh heavy on his scale, and that will raise his status in the year after. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, but he can also go down to the lowest part of Jahannam due to his wicked character. That is how serious this issue is. It's a matter of Jannah and Jahannam, our characters. Even to the extent with regards to our treatment of non-Muslims, the moral teachings of Islam apply even to the way we treat non-Muslims. Politeness, truthfulness, kindness, sympathy, and generosity is required from a Muslim to every person regardless of their faith. We are kind, truthful, generous to everybody, because that is who we are. We do not have a split personality that when you find yourself, mashallah, with your group of close brothers, you behave in a particular manner. But when you come into contact with strangers who's not in your comfort zone, then you treat them differently. That is when that person has a split personality. And the Prophet ﷺ told us this story of the Jew who lent money to the Prophet ﷺ. Now there are many interesting issues in this story. The Prophet ﷺ borrowed money from a Jew. And then one day the Jew came to the Prophet ﷺ demanding repayment of the debt. But what he did was he insulted the Prophet ﷺ by saying that you people don't like to pay your debts. And guess who was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ? Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. And he became so angry at this direct insult in the face of the Prophet ﷺ. But the Prophet ﷺ managed to stop him and calm him down and said to him, Umar, why don't you advise both of us? Teach him to demand his money politely and advise me to repay my debts promptly. That was the character of the Prophet ﷺ. And there are many examples in the seerah and the life of the Prophet ﷺ where he treated even his enemies with such kindness and mercy that it changed people's hearts. And that is the business we're in. We're in the business of presenting Islam to people so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change their hearts. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ did.